Well, good morning. And Tim is indeed a fantastic MP. He's actually one of my oldest friends, certainly in politics. He and I met on my second day at university. And a couple of weeks ago, I took my eldest son to that very same university. So as a mum, Tim and I go way back. And my eldest son is his godson. So yeah, I'm a big fan of his. And he is a big fan of balance and particularly of helping women to get on in life. And I guess it's one of my favourite topics, actually, is how do women get on in life. My parents divorced when I was 4. And I was one of 3 girls, the middle of 3 girls, very close in age. And we were raised by our mum. And because I'm extremely old, in those days, there wasn't any such thing as alimony. And so my mum used to literally work. She kind of married too young. She hadn't got a profession. She was working in a dress shop during the day and in a pub in the evening. And we had a lady who had an illegitimate child, shock horror in those days, who was living with us in our 2 up, 2 down to look after us because our mum was working all the time. So as you can see, we lived in an all-female household. And the one thing I was taught right from the very time I could do anything is never rely on a man, never rely on a man. And with almost equal emphasis is the world doesn't owe you a living, you make your own way. So, with those 2 things sort of resounding in my ears, I've seemed to have conspired to work and live in a man's world forever. So when I graduated, I went into the city and I spent 25 years in the city. And I can tell you I went to a leadership trust thing. I don't know if any of you ever done a leadership trust thing. Absolutely brilliant. It was a 1-week residential and it's a bit kind of Dragon's Den-ish. So one day you're the shop steward in a big multinational and everyone else is role playing. Someone's the boss and you've got to see them through to your way of thinking. Another day you've got to sort of do, a treasure hunt and you've got to kind of map read and someone's got to take charge of the map and you've got to sort of succeed against all the odds. And of course, most of the people on this leadership trust, we're talking 30 years ago, were men. And at the end of it all, we'd had this week together. It was quite a fantastic experience. And at the end of the week, each group had to give everybody else in the other groups one piece of advice to take away. So I think I was about one of 4 women on this group of about 80 men. And the one piece of advice they gave to me, I was age 25, is you're so scary that you must try and soften up a bit because you're absolutely terrifying. And I was like, thanks for that. That's really kind, So anyway, so that was kind of my kind of trial by fire. So all my life I've been very scary. Now my kids tell me I'm not at all. In fact, they laugh at me. And I'm always trying to be cool and clever and funny in their eyes and not scary at all. But so going through 25 years in finance and then being one of the very few people who became an MP who was actually moving from a less popular profession to a more popular profession. Most people take a total nosedive when they go into politics. I was actually trading up, So that in itself, this is my second term, so I've done it for 5 years. And what's been brilliant for me, I mean, when I was in banking, very seriously, I had a pretty tough time. I was very fortunate to be the youngest ever senior executive in Barclays Bank. And they made me the youngest ever senior executive when I was 32 years old and 7 months pregnant. So no one could say they hadn't noticed. But of course, when you become a senior executive, you change your contract. So you go from a 37.5-hour week to a whatever it takes. So when I had my child and said, could I possibly, work shorter hours? No. We've managed without female senior executives till now. We certainly don't need part-time ones, and I quote directly. And so, my sort of time during my career has been quite brutal. So there's absolutely, I really want to see the women coming through the glass ceiling. And the absolutely key thing for me in politics is coming in here, people sort of say, oh, it's such a macho environment, it must be really horrible for you women, you must really struggle here. And I'm like, no, this is so much better than banking. You have no idea how much more welcoming Parliament is for women than banking was for women. Now, I hope and I think that's changed. Is anyone here in banking? Has it changed? Please tell me it has. Yes, excellent. So I've been out of it for a little while now, but certainly politics is becoming much more welcoming to women. And one of the things we did in the last Parliament was a group of cross-party women MPs. We did a study into women climbing the corporate ladder. And we didn't want to focus on the sort of women coming through the ranks. We wanted to focus on women in boards. You know, what is it that gets women to go on boards? And the one thing that really struck me, which in fact literally just today, and I will indiscreetly share with you my experience of today in a second, but what really came through was that from all the evidence we took, from very senior women on boards down to men who are trying to get women onto boards and so on, was that the problem women have is that when we apply for a job, we look at our CV and we make absolutely certain that everything in the job description we're applying for is already covered by things we've already done. So in other words, we make sure that we can tick every single box and that we're at least as good as that new job will require. Whereas, of course, to the contrary, when men apply for a job, they have a kind of vague sort of relation to that role that they're applying for. And that there is a really marked tendency. This isn't, this study that we did showed very clear evidence of the willingness of men to put themselves forward, to have a go, and the unwillingness of women to kind of feel, oh, I can just make the leap. You know, maybe I don't know anything about, chairing a board, but what the hell, I'll have a go. Whereas, so men are much more willing to take a risk than women are. It's a real problem that we have. And actually, the interesting thing for me, because now I'm the Minister for Energy and Climate Change, and the Secretary of State for Energy and Climate Change is my best friend in Parliament, Amber Rudd. So, and it is a bit of a girl team because we have our Minister in the Lords, Nick Bourne, but of course because he's in the Lords we do the Commons work between us. Now there should be 3 ministers in the Commons, so we're one person down and we're 2 women, we're the only all-female department and we're a person down, which is obviously fine because we can cope with the workload. It's fine, okay? I'm not complaining. But the interesting thing is, one of the things we do is we recruit lots of people for non-departmental bodies, so the Office for Nuclear Regulation, all of the various bodies, the renewable energy bodies, all of the regulators, Ofgem, the Competition and Markets Authority, we have a say in, non-executive directors for all sorts of things. And of course, when we first came into office, we were getting all these wonderful all-male shortlists, and we both, completely without discussing it with each other, just sending them back saying, sorry, that's an all-male, I'm not dealing with that. And absolutely miraculously, I can tell you that these amazing women have started to appear as if from nowhere. And simply because we've said it's not good enough to just have an all-male shortlist, we're now not being given all-male shortlists. And surprise, surprise, the very often all men who are recruiting off that shortlist are choosing a woman. And it's an absolute revelation. And I think we did actually laugh to ourselves because we reckon we're probably on about 60% female hires since we came in as an all-female department. So anyone who says men don't favour men, I'm prepared to admit women do favour women, and we probably need to. But this morning was quite interesting because in my old job, I was the city minister in the last Parliament, and there's a very particular job that we're looking to hire for at the moment, the UK government's looking to hire for. And I was talking to a female potential candidate who was saying that she was encouraged at a senior level to be part of the field because we do want diversity. And she was saying, that made me feel like they just wanted me to make the numbers up. And I was trying to turn her around and say, don't think of it like that. You need to sort of push yourself forward. And that is, that's the real challenge that we face. We've got to support each other and we've got to not be put off. And so I think, women can do absolutely everything men can, and we can have babies. So I think, that's a unique skill that we should be very proud of. And we should never undermine. I've done it 3 times, and I'm still the Minister for Energy and Climate Change. So, you can, that may be just completely rubbish to most of you. You've probably achieved far more than I have. But I can tell you the most important thing for me is being a mum. So I sort of say it slightly tongue-in-cheek, but actually being the mum, I think you can do those things. My children are absolutely wedded to me and me to them. So you don't have to choose. That's the other thing that I think very important for women. We don't have to choose. We can have it all. We can succeed. We need to support each other. We've got to be ambitious. We've got to have a go. So that's about it. Thank you very much.